It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life.
All right, well, welcome to Flakemiri, for a lack of a better name for this show. This was kind of an idea that popped into my head where I said, well, a lot of people seem to like us as a unit, Shinmiri, where it's like separately we may have our own set of fans and people who may not like us, but as a unit, I think that we kind of cover each other's bases. Like, I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, but there was like that episode where George and Jerry combine efforts to date a woman where like Jerry's social skills within the date plus George's sort of organizational skills of being able to plan the dates and keep Jerry on track together created like one good human being. I feel like that's kind of where you and I are. However, I do also feel like I contribute a lot less to this conglomeration.
Yeah, what you're trying to say is you are the yin to my yang.
I'll be that. That's perfectly fine by me. Because together we are some sort of round, peaceful shape, and that's all I want. So, I mean, the format of what this podcast is, I wouldn't even call it a podcast. I mean, it's just something where I figured people want to hear a little bit more about the game, but they also probably want to hear stuff that's just, tangential from a lot of the major topics. But there's also a lot of questions out there that I feel are worth digging into in the concerns of the community, and who better to dive into them, because frankly, Shinmiri, I think that when you and I are broadcasting a tournament, we don't get enough leeway to speak about all the stuff that we want to speak about.
Right.
So why not just throw this out there? And I could not think of a better human being that I would do this with than you, because it kind of crossed my mind where I'm like, I could do this with someone else, I could do this by myself, but I need you as kind of like my, not just my moral compass, but as like an anchor to so I don't stray off and float adrift into the netherworld of various...
the black hole of never-ending Star Wars references.
Yes. And in the questions that we fielded from Twitter and Reddit, there are some Star Wars related questions. So I'll probably be able to tackle those better than you. But yeah, you are my anchor and my heart and soul, Shinmiri. So that note, welcome to Flakemiri. That is basically the long-winded intro to the fact that this is just a show where Shinmiri and I talk about Gwent, but also tackle a lot of the questions that you throw our way. And I thought that this would be a good time also, Shinmiri, to just open every single episode with the most recent information about Dagon.
Okay.
So the current Dagon news is none. Doesn't exist. Not happening. Yet. I will always end it with yet.
As we know, you and I have no information on Dagon, right? But I heard a cool theory that Dagon, now they've kind of fleshed out the Frost archetype and the Rain archetype. I heard an interesting theory that Dagon could be a way to flesh out a currently non-existing fog archetype, in addition to foglets and ancient foglets. Maybe it could do something similar to the old Woodland Spirit that had like wolves with fog and spawn stuff or summon things from the deck. That would be cool.
It could be the centerpiece that's missing, is what we're saying here. Like, if there's that gigantic reveal, maybe in December, maybe in January, maybe never at all. I like to throw it out there. You know me, Shinmiri.
Who's gonna join the game first, Dagon or Renfrey?
Oh God, I will say. Can I just say that I want to give big props to whoever that dude is who just keeps posting custom cards. First of all, Reddit and custom cards, I hate to break it to everybody, but like 90% of them are complete garbage. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to snuff out like the creative fires in people. It's great. I love it. Please be creative. But a lot of them are just absolutely terrible. And I'm not saying this to, again, I'm not going to name names or pick out what's terrible, what's bad. I just, sometimes the worst part is the fact is that there's like sorting through Reddit has become a situation where I have to kind of scroll past like 6 terrible ideas before there's like one reasonable card. There's a whole subreddit for it, Shinmiri, but this Renfrey dude, like, we get it. It's like, just props to this dude's perseverance on this, but like, it's not like, I don't know, when has this ever worked? And I guess it's a gimmick, but it's a way to sort of solidify yourself within, the community lore.
Sure, he's made a name for himself already.
Oh,
right? And And to what you said about like the custom cards being bad, yeah, I think it goes to show it's just very difficult to be a game designer or a card game designer, because like you got to consider so many different things about balance, about flavor, the themes, if the card is interesting enough or too bland, like what synergies it could have, stat line and all those sort of things. Like there's so many ways you could go wrong when you create a.
And you're not wrong about that. And that's one of the concerns I think that a lot of people have. They kind of got to the point where there are a lot of Gwent cards out there, unique actual Gwent cards. I believe there's something like 900 and close to 1,000 unique printed cards that are playable. And that's a lot of independent ideas. Now, obviously, there's an ass load of throwaways. There's a ton of them which are deploy, deal damage, deploy boost, or deploy vanilla, or just they're not actual ideas. There's filler, but there is a situation where I feel you're eventually going to run out of steam, and I don't want that to be a thing. And I know that you and I, in a private Discord, you mentioned you're like, I don't want to live in a world where we're running out of ideas, and I agree with you on that one. But I think that eventually you kind of run out of runway to a degree, where eventually you have to either toss some coal in the fire to get a little bit more thrust going, but you're like, how much runway is left is what my question is, I guess, to you. Like, this is an open discussion, so you can definitely just slam me down on this. But I'm not saying this from a sky is falling perspective. I'm saying it from a realistic perspective, where there's only so many ideas that a team can have before something else has to change.
I'm currently, I think you and I are on different pages when it comes to this subject, in terms of like, how much runway is left, and if something like a standard rotation would be necessary in the near future. I think we still have plenty of good ideas left, and I was, I've actually been pleasantly surprised by this latest set of Harvest of Sorrow, and I feel like in the first 4 or 5 days of this season so far, I've played so many different decks and I've tried a bunch of different things. I've been really happy, almost pleasantly surprised with how I feel in the first week of this expansion. I was a little bit worried coming in that maybe the meta would be dominated by stuff like meditating mages or answer or lose threats behind defenders. But 5 days in, it doesn't seem that bad. I've been having a lot of fun this season so far, and part of it is going to be because it's something fresh, something new in the honeymoon phase. But with this expansion, I think my hopes are a bit high that we still have a lot of good ideas out there that the dev team can come up with and keep things interesting without too much blatant power creep.
Right, and the blatant power creep, I think, is what I mean. Like, that just sort of qualifier. Like, there is going to be power creep; it's part of it. And what people don't understand, and just to sort of back this up a bit, I have found that a lot of players who play Gwent typically are either that's their first card game or they don't really stray away. Gwent is so unique in the sense that it's you have Magic the Gathering, the OG, to a degree, and a lot of cards are kind of modeled off that framework of there's 2 life totals, there's a mana system, you drop cards, you attack, and how that happens is where the dials and knobs are kind of twisted and turned to create something different. Gwent is completely different animal. There's no mana system. There's nothing like along those lines. There's 3 rounds and such. So, but the overlying fact remains that power creep is a thing. And what I think that a lot of players who play Gwent and don't play other card games don't realize is that this is just a thing that other card games go through, and it's just a reality. Because when you're looking to insert new cards, when cards are printed, if they are not appealing to play, then there's gonna be no incentive for players to acquire them. There's going to be no incentive for people to buy new cards, to do this, to do whatever, even from a business perspective, but even from a state of the fact that the game wants to be relevant and wants to be appealing in every set it releases. It needs to create a reason for people to buy them. And what's the reason? Well, you need cards that are going to replace cards that exist. And how do you do that? You make them better. So power creep's a thing.
Is it that black and white though? Like, I don't think the only way to make people play new cards is to make them better than the existing competitive cards. I think one way to make players play new cards is to make them support a different archetype that currently isn't competitive.
Right, but that
while keeping the power level of those new cards relatively close to the power level of existing competitive.
Okay, so I completely agree with you in that regard, where there is a way to have an appeal on new cards because they support a existing archetype that doesn't get the support it needs right out of the box, let's say. However, the underlying foundation of why people are getting those cards still exists. It's the fact that, okay, there's this new card exists. Let's say there's a new card that supports Frost. Frost is kind of always fringe. It kind of comes in and out. People try it whenever new Frost cards come out, and that's cool. I love Frost. Frost in old beta days was one of my favorite decks to play. Loved it. In this regard, it's a power creep to the degree of there's a new card that supports an old archetype, but that old archetype already existed, and I want this card because it replaces another 4 or 5 provision card that was filler for that deck prior. This is now a power. I guess power creep is not the right word because it's, but it's a support in that sense. Like I see the differential here, but it's still a situation where someone wants that card because it's an upgrade on another card for something else. And it's not directly, it's not like, well, this is a 5-drop that represents 8 points and this is a 5-drop that represents 9 points. That's a true power creep in the most purest of senses. I don't know if you played Hearthstone back in the day, but
I did.
Yeah. So do you remember when Goblins and Gnomes came out and the 4-drop, the Piloted Shredder came out? That was the ultimate 4-drop. Everything after that didn't compare to it. Every other 4-drop, I don't care what kind of deck you're playing, synergy or not, that is the 4-drop you play, because for pure stats to cost ratio, for pure impact, that was the absolute best. And that kind of painted Hearthstone in a corner where, like, if we ever want someone to play a 4-drop, it has to be better than this. But this is already so OP. And that kind of became a system where that always existed as a pillar in that degree. For instance, I
have something to add here. I think one issue with your example of Piloted Shredder is that Piloted Shredder was a neutral card, and you could play it in any deck. Whereas that's kind of why when you look at Gwent cards, the neutral cards tend to be a little bit weaker to their faction counterparts, or more of like a tech card. And so if you get like the top of the line, super competitive stat line on a neutral card, that's when it goes into every deck, like Sunset Wanderers at 11 provisions on release, right? In order to, if Sunset Wanderer was never nerfed, then in order to replace that 11 provision slot for Sunset Wanderer, you have to print something even more ridiculous than that. And I think, you can do that with a little bit more with faction cards or archetype specific cards. Give them a strong payoff card that's maybe slightly stronger than the baseline, the competitive baseline elsewhere, but it only works in this archetype, and that could be one way to encourage people to play certain archetypes. On the other hand, a bad example would be a card like Fukusha, in my opinion, because Fukusha, while it does support the Rain archetype, it's just so strong, it's so efficient stat-wise that it can be inserted into any Skellige deck. It can be inserted into a Warrior deck. It could be in a Reckless Flurry control deck, and we're seeing that already. And it might be originally intended to support Rain, but it's not going to end up, looking at it right now from my perspective, it's probably not going to end up pushing Rain to a top tier competitive level, but rather just played in previous strong SK decks.
Yeah, back when Gwent was a 4-gold system, like there was only 4 cards, that's where power creep was the most dangerous, because you only had 4 cards. There was no provision system around it. Like now you can kind of adjust and tweak cards from that regard to, maybe hone in or adjust a card from a power creep perspective. But back in the day, I say that like I sound like I'm, I like, we are old in the grand scheme of like what the kind of standard demographics are for card games and such, but we're not old. You and I are not old. I'm just going to say that, okay? We're young and we're vibrant and we're awesome. That's what I'll say. But when Gwent was in beta and there was only a 4-card gold system, that's where power creep was the best, because at the time it was a situation like this is just strictly the best card in this of the 4. Like there's these 2 for this faction and nothing else, and then the other 2 you can kind of rotate in and out. It's just the way it is. That said, I think that power creep in Gwent is like, it's a real thing, but like the difference is, and I know that we're talking about standard rotation and such, and trust me, I don't want there to be a standard rotation, but I understand that in the same way that I don't want to go get a freaking colonoscopy. Sometimes it's necessary for the health, right? Like that's a really gruesome kind of comparison, but if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. And standard rotation to me, and I knew I was going to catch flack for this, and it is the way it is. Standard rotation is a situation where eventually less is more to a degree. And I am in the same camp as you, Shin, where I am so hopeful and confident even that there are still plenty of ideas where this is not necessary. But the symptoms are there, and I think that it's something that needs to be considered. And before you chime in, I just want to throw everyone out, because also people don't know what standard rotation is. It's completely possible. Basically, what standard rotation is that whatever the legal format is for competitive Gwent, it's like a block. There's like one core set that is universally played in every single season, and then based on, let's say, calendar year, they rotate out the 2 years ago and beyond sets. So there's only the most recent 2 years worth of sets, let's say 1 year to 2 years worth of sets that are legal. That's what it is, just to go there. But from a less is more perspective, there are cards now that we have seen that, from a design perspective, are limited by existing cards that just bust them, that break them, that cannot. There are ideas that don't make it past the development stage or the development, theoretical stage, where people are just discussing ideas because cards exist that bust them. By having a rotation, some of those cards will eventually rotate out. That opens up space and more real estate for other cards to exist. Now, obviously, that is under the premise that there's just no more ideas to be had, which I don't believe there is. Or which I don't believe is true. I believe there are plenty of ideas to be had, but I think it's something that needs to be considered.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something to take into consideration. I don't think we're there yet. I think there are plenty of archetypes that are not competitive right now that could see more support in the form of newly printed cards, or even in the form of buffing old existing cards. And my hope for Gwent, I think the biggest couple things that I want for Gwent is, one, archetype diversity in the meta. I want to see a healthy number. I don't want to just have one competitive archetype per faction or one competitive leader per faction. And then I want good balance between the different factions and the archetypes within the same faction. And I want a feeling of player agency. That's the reason why I came to Gwent from Hearthstone in the first place. I want to, after I play a game, I want to feel like I can say, oh, okay, I won or lost because of the decisions I made in here, here, and here, or the mistakes me or my opponent made here or here, and I don't want to feel like it came down to either just an unwinnable matchup, or card draw RNG, or card effect RNG. Those are the things that I want to avoid. Or I didn't draw my Purify to the defender in round one, and so that's the main reason I lost, and it was kind of out of my control.
Yeah, that you and I are on the same page on that one. I left Hearthstone because I was so sick of my piloted shredder dropping a Doomsayer and ruining my board. It's just, it's legitimately, that's what it is. And if you ever spoke to any of my close friends who played it, they knew that it was it drove me insane. That a game that I loved so much, a genre of gaming that I loved so much, would betray me in those types of ways. That's why I'm still to this day incredibly grateful to McBeard for showing me Gwent, because the RNG elements were, to a degree, tuned where they're predictable but unpredictable, where I'm going to do it 1 damage, we don't know where it's going to land, but we know that there's 1 damage that's going to occur off this Trebuchet or off this old school Arcaspore or whatever. There was a certain amount of RNG that was digestible, and you could, it was accountable. You can sit there and predict at least what the overarching outcome might be. I agree with you. I think that there's still a lot of room to grow and support existing archetypes. For instance, I have thrown ideas out for what I think Reveal should be, and Reveal to me should be something along the lines of a bronze card that says boost self by one for every gold card in your opponent's hand. Boost self by, or if your opponent has a gold special card, it gains shield. If it has a gold unit, it gains +2. If it, things like that, where it's not just flipping a card over, but it's a deductive reasoning thing where
I like that.
I think that's
that
something
idea.
that can certainly. I released a video about this about a year and a half ago or a year ago, where I actually fleshed out. I'm like, here are 5 examples of cards, things to that degree, where eventually you can, based on what your opponent is playing and whatever, I know that it's this faction, this leader, I've seen these cards, and based on the information I've gathered from my quote unquote reveal, it could be called something like, maybe not reveal, but espionage or something like that.
It's
Where you gain the information, and if you're paying attention, you could kind of put 2 and 2 together. It's like one of those situations like, does he have it? Well, if I'm paying attention, I know that he had 3 gold cards left. There's 1 card left in his hand, and I've only seen 2 gold so far, things like that. But
right. The beta version of reveal was you actually flipped over cards, and you got to see them. Whereas this example, I like it because it's incomplete information. And you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together to give yourself a better educated guess of what they may or may not have.
Yes,
and
imagine
it'll reward better players who are more in tune with the meta and have already a good baseline of what they're potentially playing in their deck, and that can help you solidify, okay, well, this is probably this card then, and I can play around it.
Exactly. Boost self by the highest provision card in your opponent's hand, or boost self by the provision cost of the unit all the way to the leftmost of the hand, or something like that, where you're getting information. It's like, oh, this thing boosted by 9, so there's a 9 provision card, so maybe they do have that Yen's Invocation in hand or something like that. And it's like you said, it rewards the player who's paying attention, who's more in touch with the meta. This is not a paint by numbers, follow the guide off of the meta report, and you're going to succeed with it, because you need to actually kind of think through things. All that to say is that, there's a lot of room for other archetypes to grow. And this past little drop with Price of Power, the Harvest of Sorrows, has actually done a lot, especially for not just Bonded, not just mages, but hand buff as well. And I think that's why I'm confident that there's still a lot that they can dig into. For instance, when Dagon comes out in January, this whole fog thing that you're talking about, he's just shaking his head in disgust.
I'm just like, oh god, how many people are gonna actually believe Flake and take his word for this?
This could
gonna get the pitchforks out when it doesn't come out in January.
There's always one where they're in a broadcast where I'll just allude to it, where they haven't been paying attention for 2 years, where I've been making these false claims. But Shinmiri's disgust could either be in the sense of, maybe I broke my NDA and I'm completely fired now, or maybe I've been beating this fake Dagon drum and people have been believing me. Well, we'll see in January 17th, when that happens. But so I think there's a lot of room to grow for other archetypes. So I think that power creep, they need to sort of tune down those situations of okay, a 4 provision card that's just 7 points, bam, on the board. Are they gonna print a no circumstance 8 for 4, or a very low risk 8 for 4? That's what they need to kind of tune back from. But I do sincerely believe that that some type of, I don't want to say a standard rotation necessarily, but some type of rotation is not necessarily imminent. I don't think that it's 100% necessary this instant, but I do believe it's a consideration that needs to be taken seriously, and not as a panic button, not as a sky is falling, oh, we're fucked kind of situation. No, this is just a natural progression. It is a consequence of a successful card game. Eventually this happens, and you got to get there. And for those who think that it's going to reduce the latitude for design, it actually increases it, because you have less restrictions to print new crazy shit. But I get what you're saying. I think that
there's definitely pros and cons to it. It's not just one-sided, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it opens up design space for the team to print wackier things that potentially would have been broken with certain synergies to cards that would be outside the rotation. But I think one of the downsides is I don't like the idea of preventing deck builders and players from being able to come up have more possibilities to think about things, to combine things in interesting ways. And what I have mentioned before in that private Discord was that right now, for the last like 6-12 months, I've really enjoyed deck building. I felt like when you build a lot of archetypes, at least the ones that are fleshed out already in the game, you have many difficult decisions to make on what you put into that deck list, like what secondary archetype you combine it with your to combine with your main archetype, and like every card slot is valuable, and you have to make a difficult decision on what to play in that card slot. Whereas at the first year and a half, 2 years of Homecoming, the card pool was so small, and the number of competitively statted cards were so low that when you built an archetype, it was just like, oh, well, these are the only 20 cards that are well statted right now, so we gotta put them in. And then you've got like 5 cards left that you can kind of. That's it.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of Wild Hunt cards out there now, like surprisingly so, and that's a nice thing. I think that certain archetypes are actually just sometimes it's literally just missing one piece, right? One good solid built card that can kind of like the Self Eater. Like the Self Eater was. I don't want to say it was an anchor for that, but it was another bronze option that was incredibly powerful for a deck that may have had issues creating winning rounds that didn't commit too many golds for monsters. Slamming down vanilla points is fine, but you'd kind of want to get a lot of extra reach off of your cards, where Self Eater really came through clutch to kind of pull relics not out of the dirt, but between that and Melusine. I always feel that archetypes are typically rescued by very, very good bronze support, where those big impact golds can be held on to if you're developing a board. And Self Eater was definitely one of those cards. And I feel like a reveal archetype obviously needs to be built from the ground up. But things like you said, Frost, Fog, Soldiers. Assimilate is still good. Assimilate's excellent, actually. I think that with Arto and those types of cards, Assimilate's just perfectly fine right now. But all across, like mages,
Pirates and ships.
There you go, pirates and ships. Exactly. Even though Skellige is the loserest faction of all time.
I know. Right, well, that's the end of this podcast right there.
One episode. Yeah, exactly. This is a limited edition. Get the NFT right now because this is the one of. But yeah, I think that you're right, and I think that I will agree to disagree on the sense that it's unnecessary. That standard rotation just never needs to happen. I think that it's a consideration, and I like you am glad with the past content drops because they have felt different. They have strayed away from those previous design pitfalls that we've seen of just create or a framework, some sort of template of, okay, here's 5 provisions, it should represent 8 to 9 points on the high end. How do we do it? Well, 5 deal 4 damage or 4 deal 5 damage or something like those. Like those pitfalls need to be avoided, and I think that's.
I think nobody can say that the latest set Price of Power has been bland.
Definitely not.
Far from it, right? Yeah.
Definitely not. One thing that just kind of scares me sometimes is there's this cycle that occurs whenever new cards comes out. Is the first couple of days everybody goes down those greedy routes with the new cards, and that's perfectly fine and understandable because people want to see the end of the rainbow on where these massive plays can end up, and we've seen it with these 18 meditating mages on a board and things like that. Like we've seen where it goes, but there's a very swift overcorrection towards control to deal with it, where people are figuring out that there is a lot of reach with these cards. There is a high ceiling for them. So all those who do not want to play it or cannot necessarily grasp it will have to go back and revert to a control element where they can rein it in. And one thing that I do worry about for sure is the fact that Gwent needs to be able to create some type of happy medium that is viable, that isn't one of the two extremes. Not engine greed overload, put more threats than your opponent can handle, and the other end of the spectrum of I just need to play as much removal and play as many point-efficient cards to win rounds as possible. Keep their stuff off the board and put mine, versus I'm going to drop as many things that they can't handle as fast as possible.
Right. And it's not just those two, because there's a triangle of greed. You've got the threats that you mentioned, like Meditating Mages, the control-heavy, like no unit Scoia'tael, for example, or Madoc lists. And then you've got that third vertex of the triangle, which is Point Slam. And I do agree with you that it tends to start out very greedy, then swiftly overcorrect to super control. And I think over the next few days, we're going to see more and more people start playing like the Point Slam good stuff deck, like, for example, Devotion Symbiosis. It's a little bit of Point Slam, a little bit of Engines, but like something that's just very good against control, but also just has a ton of slant points. Your favorite deck, Lippy, maybe could be one of those. The eyebrows coming up.
There's a reason why this is also a visual medium for everyone, is the fact that the disgust can actually beam through space right back at you for that one.
So I think, the third leg, the Point Slam decks, could be a very good response to the overcorrection to control. And then the ideal, like what we want to get to, is a happy medium, like you said, where there's a equilibrium between the three archetypes in the meta, and it's not one is so much stronger than the other two. That would be out of whack. And what I want is, I don't want a rock, paper, scissors type of meta where control always beats greed, and greed always beats Point Slam, and Point Slam always beats control, but more like advantages of like 60-40 or 65-35 rather than like the 90-10. So even if you come up against an unfavorable matchup, there are still ways that you can outplay your opponent, outsmart them, do things like split up rounds in certain ways, fight for round one, some, cool tactics specific to the matchup, like Lydia stealing an Orb of Insight to be super impactful by denying their carryover and maybe getting you more carryover, as well as assimilate procs. Just like really cool things like that. Like, killing your own unit against Keltullus so that the Keltullus burns herself, that we've seen in super high-level competitive Gwent tournaments in the past. Just like really out-of-the-box, unintuitive type thinking, that if that sort of, ingenuity can help you win unfavored matchups, then that's what I would really like for us to settle down in, so that the matchups aren't so like black and white, that there is some gray in there.
Yeah, that there's a chance, right? I mean, it's not like you're walking into a massacre every single time you queue in and you see the leader and you're like, well, I lose. Like there are feelings like that, but yeah, I agree. I hope that it kind of, like you said, there's this initial pendulum swing towards greed and trying out new combos, and the overcorrection to the other side. Something in the middle needs to be able to be viable for the game to thrive and have a healthy meta. And I think that'll get there. There are a lot of bigger brains than mine out there who are developing stuff, you for one, obviously, but I mean, that are developing decks and trying new things, and hopefully it'll when the dust settles, there is a vast array, because it did exist. There were bad metas and there were great metas, and there were diverse metas that were just wonderful to exist in, where you never knew what you were up against. So I don't want to have to create a new account and fight my way from rank 25 to just see something new. I'm gonna rely on everyone out there to do their best. That said, Shinmiri, we do have a mailbag to get into, and I think you have access to some of the questions as well. I've written a whole bunch of them out. I think that we're going to take a couple minutes here to address you, the viewer. I wouldn't say fans. I don't know if we have fans, but we do have viewers and people in the community who appreciate us. So they did send us some questions. So I'm going to pick one, then you could pick one, and we can kind of go through them until we're not going to go through all of them. We'll save some for next time, but there were plenty. Also, if you're listening to this and you want to send us a question, drop us a line on Twitter, at WatchFlake for myself, at Shinmiri Shinmiri2, or just keep an eye out. We'll throw out another calling on Twitter, like Reddit or Twitter or whatever. But these are the ones we have now. And I'm going to open us up here with this question coming from Noweri off of Reddit, and they ask, what is your favorite deck in any meta of all time?
All right, so can I say 2? Is that cheating?
It's absolutely cheating, but everyone knows that you are a filthy cheater, Shinmiri, so yes, go for it.
All right, so I have nostalgia and personal bias for Veterans from open beta because it was the first deck that I was known for as a streamer. It's the reason why I started streaming, because I got like the highest SK FMMR on that season with Veterans, and it was a deck that a lot of the community viewed as easy or very basic, or kind of just play an idiot, play another idiot. But I really think there were so many nuances to that deck, especially with the round control and pushing your opponent. And because of my personal, history with it, I would say that's one of my favorites. And then the second one, it would be Nilfgaard Assimilate, because and that's very relevant right now, because I think it is a deck that is just so diverse in its lines of potential play that even playing the same matchup, multiple times in a row can result in very, very different game experience, because it's so creative and so flexible in terms of what you can copy and what you can play.
I've said this multiple times to many people, especially at CDPR. I've said that Nilfgaard is and has been for a long time the most flavorful, fun, engaging faction. It's also the most no fun faction, but I think it's the most decision tree heavy faction out there, and I incredibly appreciate that kind of gameplay where you have to build up for these massive turns. It's a situation where there's the simple way of playing, a Blightmaker and having a mage come out and have this massive tempo thinning play. Sure, that's one way, but there's also a way of, what do I drop spying on? How do I do this? Where do I disrupt their rows? I love that. I think that is a great faction. So what is my favorite deck of all time in any meta ever? I will say that before Deathwish was ever a thing, I was the Deathwish guy. I don't mean to say this to toot my own horn, but back before, remember Dow? It was like that six drop that would, when the Deathwish was, it would drop those 2 3-point bodies, or the 2 2-point bodies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then the old Griffin was trigger a bronze unit Deathwish. Like, it was like a 17-point bronze play. There was that. Also, Cyclopses tossing those bad boys. Control. I would crush with that list before anyone gave Deathwish any respect. I was still a nobody. Probably still am a nobody, but it's that was one of the decks that I loved the most, was that one. And the second one was a list that I played that was back when Zoltan would create the bird. It was back when Calvete's old ability of look at the top 3 cards on your deck and play one. So what I would do is I would stack my back row. I would play Fisher King, not the Fisher King, Albrecht. I would put Vivian de Tabry on top. Was it Vivian de Tabry? The one that like boosts or sets someone's power to their provision?
Yeah, okay.
So my last play would be Zoltan to either swipe their row, like damage their stacked row, or boost my full row. Calvete to get Vivian, and then boost my Zoltan up to 15. And that was a huge play, and I got this deck to pro rank, and nobody ever knew it. I still have the deck guide on my YouTube. Nobody gave a shit about it. But I played it to pro, and I felt happy about it. That's
the best. That's the best. Like, I love playing off-meta stuff, or even even just slightly off-meta stuff. Like, nobody else is really playing your list, and there's an extra level of satisfaction when you are able to do well with a list that nobody else really gives much respect to, or even.
Stay in the lab, do your own thing. There's a little bit of love to it. No hatred for those who. I'm admittedly just a terrible deck builder in general. I'll hit 1 home run for every 100 strikeouts. So like my success rate isn't usually worth the effort and like mental anguish of testing this stuff out. But when I do hit those home runs, feels good. Yeah. All right. Your turn, Shinmiri. You can pick one out of the bag.
All right. I'm picking a one from J No Snacks. If one of you was a superhero and the other a villain, who would be who, and what would your powers be?
Okay, this one is so easy for me because there's absolutely no way I would be the hero. If it was you and I, and the one had to be the hero and one had to be the villain, I'm 100% sure that you do not have a bad bone in your body. So even if I am 99% good, that 1% is already infinitely more bad than you have the potential to be. I don't know. You might actually be a terrible human being, but from all of our interactions, I cannot detect any ounce of badness. So off of that, then I would have to be the villain. My power, and this is purely from my own secret nasty wishes. I mean, yeah, flight, super speed, invisibility, mind reading, all that. My simple power would be anytime there is a coin flip, anytime there's a 2 outcome random result, I would win it. Every time. 1 out of 3, up in the air. RNG, let it...
Only 50-50s.
Only 50-50s. True 50-50s. Any time of, 2 outcome scenario, I always win it. That is my superpower. And
well, I mean,
if you
that's
think
even stronger. That's an even stronger superpower than you think, because according to Twitch chat and Reddit, every single probability question is a 50-50.
Oh, yeah.
It either happens or it doesn't.
It's true. Exactly. When you boil it down to 2 results, then yes, it's always a 50-50. But I would always, you know what? And then maybe that's kind of like how I lawyer my way into all these things happening. It's like, okay, I have this lottery ticket. What are the odds of winning? Well, it's like 1 in whatever, 1 in 300 something million. Okay, cool. So let's just change this to it either happens or it doesn't. Now it's 2 outcomes. I will win my outcome favorably. I win the lottery. That is lawyering that, and that might be a little bit of a cop-out on that. But yeah, any true 50-50, that would be my superpower.
All right, so I was going to choose villain, but since you claim the villain, I will have to claim the misguided hero that ends up becoming the villain. Because my superpower would be something time related or rope related. I would, encourage everybody to take their time to make their decisions, to think it through, but then that would somehow get malevolently warped into, forcing people to waste a bunch of time and sit there and subject them to their opponent roping.
So
something like that.
So you're saying that every time there's a technical difficulty when we're broadcasting a major event, that is your fault. That you're the one who is creating the situation that is wasting their time. I like it. And then you could have these catchphrases like, well, Flake, it seems your situation has become ropeless. And you could have all these wicked cool catchphrases regarding time. Okay. So... But you started off as so are we both villains? Does this mean that
I might have started off as a hero, but you live long enough to become the villain?
I suppose so. So then I guess we'll have to the follow-up question to this would be whoever the other casting pair is would be our foils. They would be whoever has to. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, there's your answer, Jano Snacks. Thank you for submitting that via Twitter. We've got here's another one. Let's go with all right, here's one from Ryan Godric, actually. Ryan Godric writes in via Twitter, what is your all-time favorite Gwent moment?
Oh man, that is a really tough one.
Well, okay, so let's dissect this a little bit, or maybe just kind of chop it up a bit. Let's say what's your favorite moment regarding you particularly, and the favorite moment that maybe you've witnessed from a broadcast or something. I have a few really good moments, but I don't know if you want to open this one up.
Okay, my favorite moment regarding me, I think, would actually be one regarding us, where we ad-libbed the Tailbot interview with you holding the Tailbot shirt in front of your face. I thought that was amazing, and that's one of the moments that I will definitely remember for the rest of my life.
I want to throw this.
I really like that one.
I want to throw this out there to everybody listening, is the fact that Shinmiri and I mean, we live on opposite ends of the continent of North America. We don't hang out very often. We work together and we work well together and we love each other, but it's not like we're going out for coffee and like every other day or whatever. So there is always a little bit of ambiguity regarding how the other may respond to, our own personalities or how we're approaching certain subjects and stuff like that. And especially early on when you and I started broadcasting together, like we didn't really have a lot of experience together. We've hung out together. We've enjoyed our companies together. But when that happened, like there were two events that occurred that were prior to that where I was like, this guy I can work with. This guy has what I want, which is he's not gonna let my serve just hit a wall and die on the ground. Like he's gonna return it. So there was the infamous Shinmiri balls incident. So I've told the story many times. You've told it many times. For those of you who don't know it, this is going to be the last time I ever probably tell this story for a long time. We were in Warsaw for a tournament. And I think I'd met you before, but it was the first time. I think you were on the analyst desk with Green Cricket, if I'm not. Yeah. And
that's right. Challenger 5, I think.
Challenger 5. It was the day that we were there, I believe, for rehearsals on the Friday, just the day before we do rehearsals. We're there for like 6 or 7 hours. Test the wardrobe, we meet the makeup people, and do all that stuff. Anyways, there's a cafeteria, and we go and get food. And I go sit down, and what I got was like this rice and like a gigantic meatball. And I got 2 because I'm a big boy. Mama wants her son to eat, so I ate. I sit down next to Shinmiri. And again, my interactions with Shinmiri had been relatively, how do I explain this? Cordial. They've been very business-related, professional. But like we hung out, we had a good time. So I sit down, and we're just chatting, and Shinmiri looks at me, deadpan, and says, crystal clear as day, "My Flake, those are some big balls you got there." And I was just like, what the hell? Who is this guy? And like, it's such standard, it's not like layered humor. It's just balls. And like, I was like, okay, I can work with this guy. That was the first one. The second one, Shin, was when we were casting and we were doing the cast for the guy. I forgot his name, and I feel embarrassed, but he was rapping and singing while he was doing it.
Forever YOLO.
That's it. And when, we just randomly threw out the whole, like, his knees weak, arms are ready, and or arms are heavy, and you're like, and then you just come back with the next Eminem lyric, and we just go through that. Like, that was unscripted. That was not planned, but we went with it. And that's when I was like, perfect. This guy is not just going to absolutely, just
slam the door shut on your shenanigans.
You're not going to like Gandalf, you shall not pass with this joke kind of thing on me. And that was one of the best things. So when it comes to all-time fave moments, I think that moment where we did that joke, but it was that was a great moment for me because it basically, not that it put to rest any doubts I had about you, because I never had doubts about you, but I had reservations about having a new casting partner and being able to be myself. Because even when I casted with McBeard, there were certain things where casting with McBeard, like, he knew my personality and we jived and it was great. But there were certain things where, like, he just wouldn't let me fly with certain elements of my personality because he wanted to maintain a certain level of professionalism, which is hilarious because you'd think it's like, okay, and to his credit, good job, because there are certain things that he wouldn't let me fly with, or he wouldn't just kind of pass back to me. But yeah, like with you, I'm not saying that you're just letting shit go because you don't care. You're just like, I'm gonna let you breathe and spread your wings and be yourself, and I'm gonna be myself, and we're gonna see where this goes. And I like where it's gone. So that's just.
I think it also comes across better when the both of us are having a lot of fun doing the casting, and it's not just pure work. It's also enjoyment.
Yes, right? 1,000%. 1,000%. And I've said this before that I do not do things that make me unhappy. I may do them for a bit until I realize that, but doing this makes me unhappy. And I am not somebody who is not vocal about things that I am not okay with. So I'll take people's shit. I'll take people's ire. But that's kind of where we're at with that. Let's do one more question each. I think we fielded like easily a dozen questions or so, but we're going to save some for next time. So again, if you didn't hear your question this time, we'll hit it another time. But thank you so much for everybody for going in. My favorite Gwent moment, I think, was that in terms of gameplay, there's a few. There's the ages ago, I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember when it was 3-row Gwent? It was play Necker, Necker got banished, play Necker, Necker got banished, play Necker, Necker got banished, and it was a concession. It was a concede on turn, like their 4th turn.
Yeah.
I forgot who the players were.
Versus Super JJ, I think. In Challenger number 2, it might have been.
Yeah, it was like way back there, Season 1, Challenger 2. I thought that was incredible. Of basically eggs meat basket, this is where all of my points are lying. It's in these Neckers. If you answer them, that's the way it goes. And it worked, and I like the concession there, because it's like, I think back then it was also, there were still closed deck lists, so for the first round. So rather than show my opponent more cards in a losing thing, it's like, I'm gonna pull the shoot on this one. And that was one of the most amazing things I've seen in any card game competition, was the conceding after 3 cards.
It was a great example of hard targeting strategy working at a Conquest tournament, right?
Yeah.
And just your deck with all these banishes, with Cyprian, Wily, whatever, like, it might not be the best for just an all-around field, but if you're only looking to beat this one specific deck that you think will be very popular at this tournament, and you happen to hit it, then that could give you a really big advantage and a really big head start in that series. So yeah, props to Super JJ. I think was the one that pulled it off against Colomon. And for me, one of my favorite moments that I witnessed, I would have to say, would be Challenger number 4, the first event that I was actually a part of as an analyst, where my good friends and teammates, DeMorcus and Andy Wand, they finished 1st and 2nd in that Challenger tournament. They came in with this very greedy strategy with, I think it was like Olaf and Siri Nova or Siri Dash or something back then. And it was just wonderful for me. It's personal bias for me as well, because they were my teammates. I worked with them, I practiced with them, I hung out with them during the trip as well. And I know you were there. The 3 of us, me, you, DeMorcus, even had a little nice stroll through old Warsaw.
It was It was a 2-hour march. Right after I hadn't slept for, I think we traveled in. I got on a plane on the Tuesday night, so I was up all day. Overnight flight, couldn't sleep, landed, spent the entire next day up as well, went on this freaking this march that he put us on. First of all, DeMarquis, I love you. I absolutely adore you. But my legs were like, fuck this, I'm going back to the hotel. Like, my brain was dead. I had been up for probably about 25 or 26 straight hours by that point. And I'm like, it's only noon. And I have to go on this gigantic thing. But I'm like, I can't fall asleep now because I'll never get my clock up. But that was my first event as well. I was hosting that event. That was the Skeleton event, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think like pretty much everything regarding that event was like my favorite moment that I witnessed. And DeMorcus winning because of his teammate, and just also like the whole event, the first live Gwent event that I was a part of, and just hanging out with all of you guys, different players, the cast, the crew, and meeting everybody for the first time. That was just in playing like Gwent charades and board games at night. That was just so awesome.
Those were great.
Definitely have to have that one up there too.
All right, last one. You can pick it, Shinmiri, before we wrap this
up. All right, I am going to pick a short one from Tendesu. Who are your top 3 players in Gwent history?
That is a short one, but that is a deep one, if I may say. Yep, Tendesu, thank you again for that submission via Reddit. So who are your favorite or top 3 players in Gwent history? Okay. So I had this kind of discussion going on where I was like, if there was a Gwent Hall of Fame, who would be in it? And this spans back all the way, it has to be from closed beta onward, and you have to address that. I will say Colomone is in there 1,000%. I think that Colomone is one of the top 3 players in Gwent history. I have to say that Freddie Babes is as well. If you go back and look at the success and not just earnings, but success, earnings, placement, Freddie Babes in season 1 was like untouchable, absolutely untouchable. And after that, I want to say life coach. And I know that a lot of people are aware that I'm a big fan of Tailbot, but I think that Tailbot is like a solid number 4. But I think that it's going to be Colomone, because Colomone is just like fucking ice veins, just completely calculated, unperturbed, like there's nothing gets to this guy. I don't know if there's hockey fans out there, but if you guys know Carey Price, he's a goaltender. Nothing bothers this guy on the ice. He's always calm no matter what the pressure is. He's like the Carey Price of Gwent. High success rate, does it. Freddie Babes, innovative, brought some spice to tournaments. Success rate in season 1 was unmatched. And life coach was enthusiastic. Life coach was freaking excellent at the game. Absolutely ridiculously excellent. Hardworking, and just, I think, one of the best players. Again, you have to take it from the snapshot of when they played, because there's a lot of people who came into the game and don't even know who this guy is. But you have to realize that this guy is just built to win card games. And
not only is he such a good player, but he's also really one of the most influential players to the community and Gwent as a game.
Sure.
Right? Like, he brought over a lot of people from Hearthstone, including myself, and he was the face of the game for a long time in the beta.
Yeah, so I'm taking this from a perspective purely of performance and just best from a skill perspective. But yeah, that if you're factoring in that as well, Life Coach even just shoots up beyond those other players, because you're right, from an influential standpoint, let's be fair, no matter what, if he picks up Gwent again today and logs in, he will have 1,000 people watching him play in 10 minutes. It's just the way he is. And that's not because he's not controversial. He's not a gimmick. He's just an excellent human being playing a card game at a high level with an innovative eye and an analytical eye and an insightful mind, and is just really enthusiastic about it. But yeah, and those are my top 3.
Yeah, and he also hosted the Gwent Slam, Gwent Together tournaments.
Oh,
too.
yes, old school Gwent Slams. Those are 2 of those bad boys. Maybe. So I had said, this is just completely tangential here, but I had said, I tweeted out a couple months ago that I am putting together a Gwent Together in Toronto in 2022. I'm still waiting for the world to heal, but I promise you that the wheels are turning on that. So keep that and keep your mind's eye open for that.
Definitely going to be keeping my eyes and ears open for that one.
Well, I got a couch for you to ride, buddy. You know what? You can have the bed. I will ride the couch. That's how much I love you.
Thank you, Blake. For me, okay, so you said Colomone, Life Coach, and Freddie Babes. For me, if I'm talking about top performing competitively player skill, I have to include the champions of World Masters Season 1 and Season 2. So that's Colomone and Piable.
Yeah.
So I would say Colomone, Piable, and then for the third player, I would say Tailbot, because over the 3 seasons of Gwent, he has been consistently there at all 3, top performing in all 3 seasons. You know, he was forced to be reckoned with in Season 1, won multiple, Gwent Opens throughout Season 1, 2, and 3, and then he won the first Gwent Open in Season 3, and he's already got his spot at Season 3 World Masters. Is he? I wonder. I think Tailbot might be the only player to attend Gwent World Masters Season 1, 2, and 3.
Well,
so I have to say Tailbot as my third.
It's hard for me to disagree that his impact. Again, there's been so many amazing players over the 4, 5, 6, 7 year history of the game. 5-year history? 6-year history?
And yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say Tailbot is also an innovator. Mm-hmm. He is somebody that when everyone thought line pockets or cleaver, when the leader was cleaver back then, everyone thought that was not good, right? It was not a good leader. I don't remember what leader they were using. Tailbot brought cleaver to, I think, challenger number 5.
Uh-huh.
And we asked him, why did you bring cleaver? Everybody else is bringing this other syndicate leader. And he straight up says, because he's better.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
The other players just aren't doing it right. They're not playing the best deck. This is the best deck. And what happened? He played it at this Gwent Challenger, and after that, everybody played Cleaver. Because they realized the strength of Cleaver was that it combined the ability to put bounty with through slander on the same turn as you played Graydon, and it made this like broken two cards in one turn combo that people just didn't see. But Tailbot was innovative enough to be the one who saw that and confident in it enough to bring it to a high stakes tournament.
Yeah, so when we're in Warsaw, basically what happens is there's usually a couple days prior, and like all the players and the casters and such are basically kind of in the same hotel, but we all go out to eat together and whatever. And we all went out, and there was one of the nights was at a restaurant, and it was tough to get a table for like 12 people, so we were split up into 3 groups of 4. And I was at a table. It was myself, McBeard, Ash Cosplay, and Tailbot, and we all sit down and we're like, McBeard and I were like, this is a good opportunity to just ask him questions because, we're all fragmented around this restaurant. No one's going to hear us. So we just asked them. We're like, okay, why did you bring Cleaver? Everyone else, well, we didn't say everyone else is bringing something else. We're like, why are you bringing Cleaver? And he's like, literally, exactly as you said it, deadpan. Like he looked at us like we're fucking idiots. And he's like, it's the best leader. Like, why are you even asking me this? Like, what a stupid question. And I'm like, well, we're just curious because it's, it's unorthodox. It's not on the ladder. He's like, yeah, everyone's doing it wrong. I'm like, fine by me. And the results spoke for themselves. And that's also what I love about him is the fact that if I ever had any clout or pull within CDPR's tournament structure, I would want to create more emphasis on the personalities and the people playing the games. They already do a great job with the interviews, but do you remember when they used to do those kind of like those B-roll videos with them walking through the field? Like those were great because you got to see either the player's character or you got to see the character that they wanted to portray. And Tailbot kind of blurs the lines of like, is he actually this cocky or is he playing to a role? And I think that he's just playing to a role, but deep inside he knows where to dig into to get into that role, that persona that he's playing. Gwent needs more of that because it makes it so great. If it was up to me, players would even have like entrance music, like WWE style, like pyro and entrance music where they just walk in and there's like all kinds of stuff. Maybe season 3, 4, or season 4, that might be a thing. If you go back in person and they kind of get my
I would love that.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so those are that's the final question. I'm going to leave on this one because this is the last question I'm going to ask you specifically. If you did have walkout music, Shinmiri, let's say like it's season 4 Masters and the there's an audience. Let's see, what's a reasonable number? 40,000 people watching us, okay, live at this gigantic stadium in Warsaw. And they're announcing the casters, and they're like, from Seattle, Washington, in the United States, weighing, I don't know how much you weigh, 250 of pure solid muscle. It's Shinmiri, and then boom, what music hits?
Oh God, you put me on the spot.
I
don't know.
did,
I was
yes.
trying to think of something rope related. But I couldn't come up with anything, so I'm just gonna take the meme option, the Numa Numa song.
Okay, but you have to do the dance too, like the whole.
Yeah,
like, yeah. Okay.
This thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Like...
that would be sick. That would get people hyped up for sure.
Yeah.
I would come out to Jimmy Eat World's. The song is called Sweetness. It is literally. I've thought about this because when I'm driving, there's nothing else to do but to listen to music and think. It's in my mind. I know what I would do. That is the song. So friends, if you're out there and you want to know what kind of music that is. So first of all, Numa Numa, picturing Shinmiri doing the dance. And then the song is called Sweetness, and it's by a band called Jimmy Eat World. That's what it would be. And that wraps it up. We'd have, again, like I said, thanks for the submissions. We have plenty more questions. We're going to get to these on the next episode, whatever that will be. Keep sending in your questions. If there's something you want to hear on the show, let us know. But yeah, Shinmiri, it's been a blast. I appreciate you. I don't want to say coming on the show because this is also your show, but you know what I mean.
Yes, and I really appreciate that you reach out to me on the idea of this show, and it's been a blast. It's really been enjoyable talking with you and just chatting and and answering the questions and from the community.
Well, and we love you too. So we're gonna end this on like we do all the time for most broadcasts that Shinmiri and I do, and just be like, Shinmiri, I love you, man. Let's end on a high note.
Yeah, love you too, Flake.
All right, we'll catch you guys later.
Love you guys out there too.
That's the one. Hammered it home. Shinmiri always rescuing the situation. We love you so much. We'll catch you next time on Flakemiri.